Long ago, the galaxy agreed on a rule that was never written in stone but carried in whispers. It was passed from one generation to another, from elder to child, from commander to soldier: never disturb the humans. No one explained why. There were no official records of wars with them, no archives that proved battles or treaties. Still, the rule existed. Entire civilizations respected it, even when they did not fully understand it. When new species reached the stars and asked why, the Council only said, "Because it is safer that way." And so the silence of humanity remained untouched, like a sleeping storm waiting behind locked doors. For centuries, the galaxy thrived without them. Empires rose and fell, great wars were fought, yet none dared to test that one command. But as time passed, fear faded into arrogance. New rulers looked at the old law and laughed. Why should the galaxy obey a warning with no proof? To them, humans were myths, perhaps extinct, perhaps never real. An old story designed to frighten children and keep explorers away from a forgotten corner of the stars. It was the Empire of Zorath that finally broke the rule. They were proud, vast, and ruthless. Their fleets stretched across thousands of worlds, and their armies crushed rivals without mercy. To them, no species was strong enough to resist their power. When their scouts discovered an abandoned human world, scarred with ruins but rich with hidden technology, they made their choice. They would take what they wanted. They would prove the rule was nothing but superstition. At first, it seemed easy. Their soldiers walked through empty streets, laughing at the cracked stone walls and the rusting towers. The air was still, the soil lifeless. They dug deep into the ruins, searching for weapons or knowledge, and when they found ancient machines, they carried them away like trophies. None of them noticed the faint vibrations that began to hum beneath their feet. None of them felt the quiet pulse that rippled into the stars, too faint for their instruments to read. But something heard. Something ancient. Something patient. Across the galaxy, old veterans shivered without knowing why. Leaders who remembered shadows of the past looked up at the sky and felt their hearts grow cold. There had been rumors, long ago, of wars so terrible that even history itself erased them. Wars where humans fought with a fury that broke planets and silenced fleets. Wars that ended not in victory, but in an agreement: let them sleep. The veterans whispered to one another, "If the rule has been broken, then none of us are safe." But the young and the arrogant laughed. They called it fear of the old. They mocked the trembling council members who urged caution. They pointed at their fleets, their weapons, their power, and asked, "What can ghosts do against us?" On the ruined world, the answer began to awaken. Beneath the broken surface, hidden vaults lit with cold blue fire. Machines stirred, their eyes glowing for the first time in centuries. Ancient satellites turned, scanning the stars as if they had only been sleeping. Across the void of space, in dark regions untouched by maps, fleets that had waited in silence powered up. Their engines did not roar, they whispered, as if promising something worse than destruction. The Zorath Empire was the first to notice. Their ships received a transmission, simple and short. No name, no threat, no demand. Only 6 words. "You should not have woken us." Their leaders dismissed it as a trick, perhaps another empire trying to frighten them. They mocked the message in their halls, laughing as if it were a joke. But laughter turned to silence when their first colony vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. No explosions, no wreckage, no survivors. An entire world gone dark, every signal cut, as if it had been swallowed by the void. Their fleet searched, but found nothing. And silence, they soon learned, was far more terrifying than fire. Fear began to spread. Rumors reached every corner of the galaxy. Ships whispered of ghost fleets appearing and vanishing in the blink of an eye. Whole armadas disappeared without a fight, without a warning. Survivors who managed to return spoke of shadows moving faster than thought, of enemies who fought like predators playing with prey. They said humans never shouted, never roared, never gloated. They moved with cold purpose, and when they struck, they left nothing but silence behind. The council begged for unity. They pleaded for peace between rival empires, for cooperation to resist the new threat. But it was already too late. The humans had opened their eyes fully now, and the galaxy trembled. On the front lines, the proud Zorath fleets tried to fight back. They had thousands of ships, weapons capable of burning entire worlds. They believed their numbers would crush the humans. But battles lasted minutes. Their fleets broke apart as if they were toys. Commanders surrendered without firing a shot. Admirals sent pleas for mercy, but mercy was not offered. Humanity had slept too long, and now they were awake, and awake meant unstoppable. The galaxy began to remember. Old ruins, old stories, fragments of history suddenly made sense. This was why the rule had existed. Not out of superstition, but out of survival. The humans had not been forgotten by accident, they had been buried by design. A dangerous truth hidden away, because facing it meant terror. The galaxy had lived in false safety, believing themselves kings of the stars. Now they understood they had only been children playing in a garden, while a wolf slept nearby. One empire had been foolish enough to shake the wolf awake. And now, the wolf was hunting. Across trade routes, silence spread. Merchant ships refused to travel. Armies hid within their borders. Alliances crumbled as every empire prayed the same desperate prayer: do not let the humans look at us next. The Zorath Empire, the once proud rulers of thousands of worlds, collapsed first. Their cities burned. Their leaders vanished. Their fleets scattered into the void. And when survivors crawled back to the council, their eyes were empty. They spoke the same words over and over, as if repeating them could keep them alive. You should have let them sleep. But it was too late. Humanity was awake again. And the galaxy would never be the same. The silence of the stars no longer felt safe. It felt heavy. Heavy with fear. Heavy with the knowledge that every empire had ignored the one rule. The stars themselves seemed to tremble, as if even the universe knew what had been unleashed. And somewhere, out in the dark, humanity whispered to themselves, cold and patient, we are awake. And we remember. The soldiers of the Zorath Empire marched boldly through the ruins. Their heavy boots crunched against broken stone, echoing across empty streets that had once belonged to humans. Laughter carried through the air as they mocked what they saw. To them, this was nothing but a dead world, a relic of some forgotten race too weak to survive. Their commanders promised glory and riches for whoever uncovered the secrets buried beneath the surface. The humans were gone, they said, and all that remained was scraps for the Empire to claim. Teams of diggers pushed deeper into the ruins, tearing open collapsed buildings and ancient bunkers. They uncovered strange machines, rusted but still humming faintly with power. Some devices glowed when touched, others resisted all attempts to break them open. The soldiers treated them as trophies, tossing them into cargo holds without care. Every discovery filled them with greater arrogance. To the Zorath, this was proof. Humans were nothing but myths. If they had been real, they were gone now, dust, bones, and broken technology. The old rule was nothing but fear clung to by weak species. But in the silence of the ruins, something stirred. Deep below the ground, where even scanners could not reach, a pulse began to thrum. It was slow at first, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. The vibration ran through the soil, through the metal of the old machines, and finally out into the void. The signal was small, almost invisible, yet it traveled with purpose. It was not a call for help. It was a warning. A whisper that stretched across the stars. The soldiers felt none of this. They continued to mock, filling their transports with artifacts. Some of them even carved their names into the stone walls, as if to erase what came before and claim the world as their own. Their laughter grew louder, their pride swelling with every passing hour. But above them, in the dark sky, something shifted. A single satellite, hidden in orbit for centuries, blinked to life. Its sensors opened, its memory awakened. With cold precision, it turned toward the stars and sent out a signal of its own. The ruins below glowed faintly, ancient systems activating one by one. Lights flickered in long-buried tunnels. Machines that had been silent for ages stretched their limbs as if awakening from a long sleep. The soldiers noticed a change in the air. The ground seemed to hum beneath their feet, though no one could explain it. Some dismissed it as machinery settling, others as their imagination. But a few grew uneasy. They glanced over their shoulders, weapons ready, as though someone was watching them. Back on their command ship, the generals celebrated. They broadcast their discovery to the Empire, claiming they had found proof that humans were no more. Their message was filled with pride and arrogance, their voices carrying across the void. The rule is broken, they declared. And nothing has happened. But they were wrong. Something had happened. Something quiet, something vast, something unstoppable. The Empire just did not see it yet. For in the depths of space, far beyond their borders, something answered the call. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Traders in distant systems reported strange signals on their journeys. Old veterans of forgotten wars grew restless, waking from uneasy dreams with cold sweat on their skin. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, the oldest members sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the stars as if waiting for something they could not name. The young rulers of the galaxy scoffed at the growing unease. They stood tall in their golden chambers and laughed at the fear of the old. To them, the humans were nothing but a story. They had no proof, no battles recorded, no official history. What kind of enemy left no mark? They told themselves it was all a lie, a bedtime tale told to keep explorers away from dangerous ruins. But there were those who remembered. They were not scholars or kings. They were soldiers, scarred and broken, who had survived conflicts so ancient that their names had been erased from records. They spoke in hushed voices, afraid that even saying the word human too loudly might draw attention. Their stories were not of glorious battles but of nightmares. They spoke of enemies that did not stop, of warriors who fought as though death itself was only an obstacle. One council member, an elder with trembling hands, dared to whisper what others feared. "If the rule is broken," he said, "then none of us are safe." His voice carried through the chamber like a crack of thunder, but instead of stirring unity, it drew laughter. The young leaders mocked him. They raised their voices, mocking the legends, calling them ghost stories. They told themselves that the Zorath Empire had proven the humans were dead. If nothing had happened yet, then nothing ever would. But as the arguments raged, signals began to appear. At first, they were dismissed as errors, static, broken codes, random noise. Yet again and again, the same pattern returned. Cold, sharp pulses that echoed across space. The messages were faint, but their presence spread wider each day. Entire networks caught the echoes. Fleets reported interference. Starships found their navigational systems briefly failing, as though something unseen brushed past them in the dark. On the worlds of the Zorath Empire, unease began to grow among ordinary people. Farmers on the outer colonies saw shadows in the skies where no ships were listed. Miners heard strange vibrations in the stone, as if the planet itself was alive. Some workers vanished, their camps left empty, tools still in their hands. Rumors spread quickly, though officials silenced them with threats. Yet rumors are stronger than laws. In taverns, in markets, in quiet homes, the same words were repeated. The humans are waking. The council dismissed these stories, but the fear was real. It moved through the galaxy like a storm building on the horizon. Some prepared in silence, stocking weapons and supplies, while others prayed to gods who had never listened before. The old rule was no longer a distant warning. It was a shadow stretching over every world. And far away, in the ruins where the Zorath soldiers still dug, machines continued to stir. Hidden eyes opened in the dark, scanning the stars. A message pulsed outward, stronger than before. Not a plea. Not a request. A promise. Beneath the broken cities of the human world, ancient machines stirred fully awake. Their frames were covered in dust, their joints stiff from centuries of silence, but their power cores pulsed with life once more. Blue light spilled across the underground chambers as systems connected one after another, forming networks older than most empires in the galaxy. Deep voices of artificial intelligence began to murmur to each other in forgotten codes, their language sharp and efficient, designed for war. Above the ground, the ruins seemed the same, silent and empty. The Zorath soldiers carried on their digging, unaware that every move was being tracked. Hidden cameras, disguised as stone, watched them. Sensors measured their weapons, their armor, their blood. Every detail was recorded and transmitted into the dark. Humanity was not just waking, it was studying, preparing. In orbit, the single satellite that had blinked alive was no longer alone. More of them lit up, rising like eyes from the shadows of debris fields. They turned toward each other, linking into a chain. The network expanded until it reached deep into space, where something vast waited. Fleets hidden in the void, wrapped in cloaking fields, stirred like predators stretching after a long sleep. Across the galaxy, Signals cut through civilian communications. Merchant ships reported strange encounters, flashes of light, ships appearing for only seconds before vanishing again. Some claimed to see vessels unlike anything in current use, dark and sleek, moving silently without leaving a trace. The reports were dismissed as panic or lies, but those who saw them never laughed again. On the surface of the ruined human world, the hum of the ground grew stronger. The soldiers started to notice. Their boots vibrated with each step, and their instruments flickered with strange readings. Some grew nervous, but their commanders barked at them to keep working. To question orders was death, and fear was not an excuse. Still, in the quiet moments, the soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Something was wrong. The ruins felt alive, as if the world itself was watching them. Far away, in the uncharted regions of space, a fleet broke formation. Ships as black as night, lined with faint red lights, began their journey. They traveled without sound, their engines bending light itself. No sensors detected them, no radar warned of their approach. They moved like shadows through the void, drawn by the signal from the ruins. Humanity had waited long enough. Now, they were coming. In the hidden control chambers, long-dormant human soldiers stirred in cryopods. Their eyes opened slowly, reflecting the blue glow of the machines. Their breathing was steady, their expressions calm, but their movements carried purpose. They did not ask why they had awakened. They did not hesitate. They simply prepared for war, as though centuries of sleep had been no more than a moment's rest. On the command ship of the Zorath fleet, alarms suddenly blared. Unidentified energy spikes appeared across the system. Their sensors struggled to focus, but the readings were clear. Something vast was powering up beneath the planet. The generals barked orders, sending their ships into defensive positions. They still believed themselves the masters of the stars. They still believed no ghost could challenge them. But the truth was now clear. Humanity was awake. The Zorath command ship floated in orbit, its decks filled with noise and tension. Officers shouted over one another as red lights flashed across the bridge. Scanners strained to make sense of the readings coming from the planet below, but the results changed every second. First, the instruments showed nothing at all. Then sudden spikes of impossible energy surged upward, as if the planet itself was alive. Entire systems went offline without reason. At first, the generals dismissed it as faulty equipment. They ordered recalibrations, demanded reports, but the fear in their officers' eyes betrayed the truth. Something was moving below. Something vast. Then the first transmission came through. The bridge fell silent when the words appeared on their screens and echoed across their speakers. "You should not have woken us." There was no signature, no location, no sound of breathing or voice behind the message. Only those 6 words, repeated in perfect, cold rhythm. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the most arrogant general felt a chill crawl down his spine. Then laughter broke the silence. One commander smirked, his voice filled with arrogance. "So the myths can speak. Let them try. We are the Empire of Zorath. We do not bow to ghosts." His words filled the chamber with false courage, and soon the officers joined in, their laughter rising like a shield against the fear pressing down on them. But courage is fragile. Within hours, the first colony went dark. It was a thriving mining world, rich with resources and heavily defended. The Empire had placed thousands of soldiers there, with fleets guarding the skies. No warning came. No alarms were raised. One moment, the colony bustled with life. The next, silence. Every signal vanished. The fleets orbiting the planet disappeared. No wreckage. No distress calls. Only emptiness where a world had been. The generals could not explain it. They ordered ships to investigate, but those that entered the system never returned. Panic spread through the lower ranks, though the high command still clung to arrogance. They told themselves it was sabotage, an attack from a rival empire, anything but what the old stories whispered. But deep down, even they felt the truth. Something far older, far stronger, had awakened. Word of the lost colony spread beyond the empire's borders. Traders spoke of it in hushed tones. Entire stations began to fear shadows drifting outside their windows. Across the galaxy, rumors grew faster than the officials could silence them. Survivors, very few and barely coherent, spoke of dark shapes blotting out the stars, ships that moved without sound or light. They spoke of precision, of enemies who struck once and left nothing behind. The Zorath Council tried to crush the fear, declaring their power absolute. They promised revenge. They promised victory. But promises did not stop the second colony from vanishing. Or the third. Or the fourth. Each one gone without fire, without battle. Silence was all that remained. The fear spread faster than any fleet could travel. What began as whispers in backwater stations soon became a storm echoing through every corner of the galaxy. Merchants abandoned trade routes, claiming to see shadows of ships that left no trace. Mining crews refused to work on distant worlds, swearing they heard voices in the static of their comms. Even hardened soldiers began to mutter the same words in their barracks: "The humans are awake." World after world reported strange encounters. Some fleets vanished entirely, swallowed by the void. Others returned broken, with half their ships gone and the survivors speaking in trembling voices. They said the humans never revealed themselves fully. They struck in silence, disabling ships before anyone realized the battle had begun. Entire armadas were dismantled piece by piece, like predators tearing prey apart slowly and deliberately. On neutral planets, panic boiled over. Crowds gathered around council halls, demanding protection. But no empire could give answers. The leaders argued in chambers, shouting over each other. Some demanded unity, others demanded war. But none could agree on a plan. For how could anyone fight an enemy they could not see? In the shadows of the council, the elders who remembered grew pale. They spoke in low voices, telling fragments of the old truth. They reminded the young that humanity was not a story, not a myth. They were warriors who once brought empires to their knees. The rule had been created for a reason. But the young refused to listen. They still clung to their pride, even as their fleets crumbled. Meanwhile, the Zorath Empire felt the weight of its mistake. Every colony they built seemed cursed. Stations went silent. Cities emptied overnight. Their citizens no longer trusted their rulers. Rebellion sparked in the outer systems as fear overcame loyalty. The Empire tried to respond with force, but even their armies were losing faith. Soldiers deserted in the night, whispering that no weapon could stop what was coming. And through it all, the humans never spoke again. Not a single message, not a single demand. Only silence, heavier than war drums, pressing down on every world. Silence that felt like the calm before something greater. The galaxy now understood what the old law had meant. It had never been superstition. It had been survival. The humans had been allowed to sleep not out of respect, but out of fear. And now, because one empire had broken the rule, the entire galaxy trembled beneath the weight of their awakening. The Zorath Empire gathered what remained of its pride. They called upon every fleet, every soldier, every weapon. From the inner worlds to the farthest colonies, ships were recalled and armies assembled. The High Council declared that the humans would be crushed, that their return would be nothing more than a brief disturbance in the eternal power of Zorath. Their speeches were filled with thunder, their banners waved proudly across the stars. But beneath the surface, their people no longer believed. Fear clung to every word like a shadow. The first great battle came swiftly. A fleet of thousands, armed with weapons capable of shattering moons, waited in formation near one of the border systems. The commanders stood ready, confident that their overwhelming strength would prove once and for all that the humans were nothing but flesh and blood. For long hours, the void was quiet. Then, without warning, the shadows arrived. They did not appear on scanners at first. They slipped between signals, bending light, hiding in silence. Only when they chose to reveal themselves did the Zorath ships see the truth. Dark vessels, sleek and sharp, moved like hunters through the void. They did not roar forward with blazing guns. They glided. Silent. Watching. Waiting. Then they struck. The battle did not last hours. It did not even last minutes. Human ships cut through the Zorath Armada with precision, disabling engines, tearing apart defenses, boarding vessels before alarms could even sound. Zorath weapons fired wildly into the dark, hitting nothing. Their commanders shouted orders, but their fleets broke apart like glass under pressure. Soldiers screamed into comms, begging for direction, but no one could answer. By the time the humans withdrew, thousands of ships had been reduced to drifting husks. Those who survived spoke of warriors who moved like shadows, soldiers who boarded with silence and left only corpses behind. They said the humans did not laugh, did not boast, did not speak. They fought with calm efficiency, as if this was not war, but simply work. And in the final moments of the battle, when surrender signals flooded the channels, the humans gave only one reply. You should have let us sleep. The Zorath Empire tried again and again. They threw fleets, weapons, entire legions into the fire. Each time, the battles grew shorter. Each time, their forces collapsed faster. Admirals began to desert. Commanders chose to flee rather than face the silence of human warships. Entire sectors broke away, refusing to fight. The empire that once stretched across thousands of worlds began to fracture, crumbling from the inside. Soon, their leaders themselves vanished. Some claimed they were taken, others whispered they fled into the void. But it did not matter. Without command, without hope, the empire fell. Cities burned, colonies surrendered, and what had once been the most feared power in the galaxy became nothing more than a memory. The galaxy watched in horror. For centuries, they had believed the humans gone, erased, or powerless. But now they saw the truth with their own eyes. The humans did not rage. They did not shout. They simply hunted, and no force could stop them. The Zorath Empire's pride was broken, but its leaders refused to accept defeat. They called every fleet back to their core worlds, stripping colonies of defenses, forcing their citizens into service. The skies above their capital filled with ships, thousands of them, an ocean of metal and firepower. Generals stood tall before their soldiers and promised that this time would be different. This time, they would destroy the human threat once and for all. But their soldiers no longer believed. The stories had spread too far, the fear too deep. Survivors of earlier battles spoke of fleets vanishing in silence, of comrades taken without warning, of black ships that moved like phantoms. Many Zorath soldiers stared into the void and wondered if they would ever return home. Some whispered that fighting humans was not war, it was suicide. When the humans came, they did not arrive with the thunder of war drums. They appeared suddenly, silently, their ships sliding out of the dark like predators circling prey. No transmissions. No negotiations. Only the quiet hum of engines built for hunting. The battle began before the Zorath commanders realized it had started. Systems failed across their fleet, weapons went dark, engines shut down. Ships drifted helplessly while human vessels cut through them with terrifying precision. Every strike was calculated. Every movement was exact. The Zorath fired wildly, their weapons lighting up the void, but their attacks struck only shadows. Within minutes, the formation was broken. Hundreds of ships exploded into fire, their wreckage scattering like sparks across the darkness. Human soldiers boarded the crippled vessels, moving with eerie calm. They fought without hesitation, their eyes cold, their strikes merciless. Zorath soldiers tried to surrender, raising their hands, dropping their weapons, begging for mercy. The humans offered none. They had warned them once. That warning had been ignored. Back on the capital, panic spread as reports flooded in. The mighty fleet that was supposed to save them was being torn apart. Whole divisions vanished from the command screens. Generals shouted orders that never reached their ships. Admirals cut the comms and fled, abandoning their own men. The battle ended almost as quickly as it began. What was meant to be the Empire's great stand became its greatest humiliation. The survivors who crawled back to their world repeated the same words over and over, their voices hollow, their eyes empty. You should have let them sleep. The Zorath Empire had been the strongest power in the galaxy, feared by all who opposed it. Now, it was broken. Its fleet shattered, its people scattered, its rulers gone. What remained was only fear, fear not just within Zorath, but across every empire that had once mocked the rule. Because now the truth was undeniable. Humanity was awake. And no one knew who they would look at next. The fall of the Zorath Empire echoed across the stars like a warning bell. Worlds that once swore loyalty to them declared independence overnight. Neighboring empires, who once feared Zoratha's fleets, now rushed to erase all evidence of their former alliance. No one wanted to be next. No one wanted to draw humanity's gaze. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, silence ruled. Leaders sat in their seats but spoke little. They had watched the mightiest empire collapse in days. They had seen fleets burn, planets emptied, and soldiers vanish into the dark. Every species felt the same cold truth pressing on them: humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. Humanity was awake. On distant trade hubs, smugglers whispered new stories. They spoke of human ships moving through hidden routes, of entire convoys disappearing, of mysterious signals heard in the deep void. Some swore the humans were preparing for war against every empire. Others believed they wanted nothing, only to be left alone. But no one dared to test which was true. The most fearful were the young empires, who had mocked the old law for generations. They now searched through their histories, desperate for forgotten knowledge, trying to learn what humanity truly was. But the records were empty. Whole archives had been erased long ago, as if someone wanted the galaxy to forget the truth. And so the silence deepened. Every empire tightened its borders, armed its fleets, and hoped the humans would not notice them. But deep inside, every leader knew the truth: there was no hiding. Humans had seen the galaxy once before, and they would see it again. On Earth, the humans did not celebrate. They did not boast of their victory. They rebuilt their ships in silence, repaired their armor, and looked outward with calm, unblinking eyes. They knew the galaxy was watching. They knew fear would spread. And still, they said nothing. Because the humans understood something the others did not. The galaxy had already declared war the moment the rule was broken. And wars, once begun, never ended quickly. So the stars themselves seemed to tremble, waiting for the next move. Empires held their breath, wondering which world would fall next. But one thing was certain: the age of silence was over. The humans were awake. And the galaxy would never sleep again.